The Democrats are the only hope that Ukraine has. You believe that?
It's time to pack it in. You just can't do this anymore.
You're going to vote for him, and I'm going to vote for him if he stays.
I mean, we're in a situation. There's a good piece in the New York Times today by Adam Grant from the Wharton School. It's called The Escalation of Commitment to a Losing Cause.
How did we end up in this terrible situation?
How many hours we got running?
What's going to happen to Ukraine if Donald Trump is in?
My fingers are still burning from 2016. No matter how old these Congress people are, they're all rich. The Congress itself is corrupted by money as well. The bottom line is, if it wasn't for Joe Biden, this war may very well have already turned completely against Ukraine.
Hello, everybody. This is Brian Bonner. I'm the host of Ukraine Calling for Hromadske Radio, and I'm coming to you today on American Independence Day with one of the great Americans of all time. Reno Domenico is joining me. He is a longtime educator, owner and founder of Sterling Business School in Kiev. And more importantly to today's topic, he is chairman, longtime leader of Democrats Abroad. And we have a lot to talk about because I've never seen anything like this in America. Hello, Reno. Welcome to the program.
Hello, Brian. Very good to be with you. Happy 4th of July. 248 years ago, our founders tried to give us a republic. And about 3 days ago, the corrupt Supreme Court in the U.S. tried to give us a king. So we have a lot of work to do.
We certainly do, and not much time. With the November election coming up, I don't recall a situation like this now, where we have, as we're speaking today, there is a groundswell to persuade President Joe Biden to drop out of the race because of his disastrous debate performance. And I know you voted for him. I voted for him. We want a Democrat in the White House. And any Republicans listening, I'll give you equal time. But how did you arrive at your position that he should resign for the sake of the party and for the sake of the country?
Well, Brian, you know I'm an organizational Democrat. I mean, I'm an FDR, John Kennedy, New Frontier Democrat. I've always been an organization guy. I believe in it. It works. It works for us in New Jersey, and it worked for a long time. I was all set up for that debate. I got up in the wee hours of the morning. I made up a pot of black coffee. I was sitting there ready for Joe Biden to come out in a debate in which they selected the time, the place, the terms and conditions. And I was waiting for Joe to come out and be fighting Joe Biden that I've been used to in American politics, not just in his presidency, but before that as a leader in the party and a leader in the U.S. And what I saw in the first 30 seconds, I said, this is not going to be good. And the next hour and a half was not good. And within 30 seconds of that show ending, I had posted my comments that I think, for the sake of the country, Joe Biden has to do the right thing. And he's going to have to be the one to make the decision. This is not going to be something that the party or anyone in influence is going to be able to push him into doing. He's going to have to come to the conclusion himself. If I were handling him, I would ask him to go watch that debate one more time and do a self-analysis and say, listen, can I bring this fight to Donald Trump? Because we're not going to waste time on this show discussing the fact that Donald Trump's unfit to be president of the United States. He's a criminal, he's a sex predator, he's all kinds of problems. But we need a fighter, and there's no second chance in this game, and we've got to make a move. We're very fortunate because if this debate was in September, we'd be locked in and there's nothing we can do. But there is time between now and the convention. We have a very deep bench of candidates that can carry the ball as far as I'm concerned. We need somebody who can fight, stand up to Donald Trump, call out his, innumerable lies and falsehoods and transgressions and idiocy. I mean, it's really idiocy. We shouldn't be talking here about Donald Trump and how unfit he is for office. And unfortunately, we're left with a situation where our standard bearer, and listen, I love Joe Biden, and I think a lot of Democrats love Joe Biden. He's had a tremendously successful presidency. It's been remarkable what he's been able to accomplish in this polarized political environment and in an environment in which he has not had complete control of Congress for the last 2 years. So I think he needs to come out, make a decision, go out on a high note, and give us a chance to get a standard bearer who can carry the fight.
I should note that Reno was a longtime public educator in America. I believe Sterling High School or district principal for nearly 20 years, but that's suburban Philadelphia. So you're sort of from Joe Biden's neck of the woods in a reliably Democratic state, New Jersey. Looked at the debate. I was glad that they were having it in June because to me, it was clear that his staff had been keeping him in a bubble and propping him up for a long time. And what that debate showed me was all the fears that Americans had, 3/4 of Americans think he's too old, were really true. It wasn't just one bad night. And do you agree with that?
I would hope, and Brian, you and I have been through a number of debates with Republicans, and we've had a number of political discussions. If I showed up like that, I would hope that the people close to me would say, Reno, it's time to pack it in. You just can't do this anymore. And I don't think it's necessarily just a question of age. I think it's a question of stamina. It's a question of general health. What we saw was a condition. It was not an episode. If it was one bad debate, yeah, we would be able to ride it out. But he did not rise to the occasion. If someone could guarantee me, assure me that this wouldn't happen again, I would be psychologically capable of saying, okay, let's go forward. Because there's a lot to be said for incumbency. There's a lot to be said for keeping things in order. But
let's take
we can't guarantee that this isn't going to happen again.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I agree that the effects of aging don't improve over time. And this wasn't, we had plenty of signs earlier than this. What I'm worried about is this shows that other people are making decisions for him out of necessity. And now you see this groundswell of people saying, basically, he's had these episodes numerous times, and we just haven't been fully informed of it. And right now, they're circling the wagons. They're saying incumbency. He's the only guy who can beat Donald Trump. He's the only guy who can appeal to white male voters or cut that lead that Trump has in that category of voters. What happens if he stays on the ticket? Does he take the Democrats down to defeat? Because you're going to vote for him, and I'm going to vote for him if he stays.
Yes, that's absolutely true. The hardcore base of the Democratic Party will stay with him. People like me, I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. I'm not going to not vote. I'm not going to vote for some third-party candidate and waste our ballot. In America, it's a binary choice, and that's the way it goes. We have the luxury of time. Up until 1980, really, the conventions were where the candidates were selected. We are very fortunate that we have the time. If Joe makes the right decision, does the right thing for the country, the right thing for the party, and the right thing for himself, goes out on a high note, we have a very deep bench of Democrats. And I think there are a number of people that can carry the ticket. Kamala is certainly one that has to be considered. Gavin Newsom has to be considered. Whitmer has to be considered. Even the governor of my state, Murphy. I think anybody who's been a successful executive at this point can handle Donald Trump. It's got to be somebody who can answer him. Think of all the work that Joe Biden did for labor in the last 4 years. He's basically resurrected the labor movement in America. He didn't even mention it in the debate.
Listen, if we go over that debate, it was a disaster, so we could probably shorten that. What about his temperament? It's hard to give up power, but we've seen Joe Biden, and I never had the impression that he wanted power for the sake of power. He's dropped out before, and he stepped aside in 2016 for Hillary Clinton. I had the sense that, and I'm predicting it, is a realist enough to drop out, but he's going to have to do it very quickly. Wouldn't you agree?
Relatively quickly. I mean, look, Joe's an Irish politician. Irish can be very stubborn, as can Italians. And I think it's going to be very tough. I mean, we're in a situation, there's a good piece in the New York Times today by Adam Grant from the Wharton School. It's called The Escalation of Commitment to a Losing Cause. This campaign's been going on for 14 months. Joe's campaigned to be president for a good part of the last 30 years. and they're down to 4 months. It's very hard to pull the plug on your own dream. And of course, the second term, I'm sure, is the dream of every successful president in America. But we have to count on his good judgment. We have to count on him doing the right thing for the country. That's what he's got to look at.
He's going to be defeated if he stays.
You know, I've been around and I've been involved in this at the grassroots for a long, long time. What I smelled at the end of the debate is I smell defeat. And we're headed to a 1980s style debacle if we don't change course.
One scenario, which seems to me makes a lot of sense. Not only should he not run for re-election, but he should resign from office to give Kamala Harris the advantages of incumbency. And I don't know, but I'm told, but then, that campaign can be on the ballot just as the Biden-Harris. They can keep the campaign money that they've raised. It would give her an edge, the edge of incumbency. What do you think about that scenario?
I think Kamala has got to be considered as a top candidate, but I don't think she's the only candidate. And I don't necessarily buy the argument that the campaign money can't be funneled to a new effort. It is important to think about it this way. Yes, Kamala is in the campaign is running, and she would understand exactly where they were going and how they were going to do it. So there's a lot to be said for her. She certainly, I think, is capable. I think she's come a long way. I think she's grown into the office. I think we have, as you said, 6 weeks, maybe a little bit more, but certainly enough time for the American public to take a look at top-notch candidates. This really required that the DNC do some work, which I've never been really impressed with in the last 25 years, and get the top 5 or 6 people that the party would be willing to look at, showcase them, maybe have some debates, certainly give them all time at the convention, and let's decide this thing on the floor. I heard this argument that the party is split and the party is fractured. That is not true. I know what a party that's fractured looks like, and this is not it. The Gaza issue certainly is causing consternation among some elements of the party. It's a divisive issue. Our long-term ally, Israel, has not been exactly the best partner for the U.S., certainly this year and certainly for the last 15 years or so years. But nevertheless, these are issues we can rise above. We don't have factions going into the party like 1968 where there was violence in the street. It all starts with Joe, Brian. Joe's got to come to the understanding. It all starts with him.
He needs to release his delegates. So you want a good old-fashioned open convention where the delegates decide who the nominee is.
Yeah, think about it. Think about how exciting it would be for the American public. For a change.
And by the way, that's August 19th in Chicago.
In Chicago. Makes me regret not running for delegate this year. How exciting it would be for the American people to actually see the best of our best go at it in a civilized, democratic fashion, to actually see this is what democracy looks like, because we're certainly not getting a version of democracy from Donald Trump. And at this point, the American public is not really excited about the election in general. I think if we give them the opportunity to see, here's our best, and our best is very good. The Democratic bench is very strong. It's just, been in a hiatus. We haven't been bringing them forward. But we have very capable people. Again, Kamala is one of the top. And maybe it does make sense to bring her forward. I got my fingers are still burning from 2016 because I think Hillary would have been president.
We have a lot of people. Gretchen Whitmer, as you mentioned, Gavin Newsom, California governor. But let's talk about because we have to get to the implications for Ukraine, because this is a big election for Ukraine. How did we get in an American situation where, as you said, the Democrats have a good bench, but they haven't been brought forward? And we ended up in a situation with an 81-year-old who nobody wants and a 78-year-old who nobody wants, both with high disapproval ratings. And I know we have term limits for presidents. I hope we still have it if Trump gets back in, but we have them, but we don't for Congress. Is it the fact that we need term limits for Congress, or we need to take big money out of campaigns? How did we end up in this terrible situation?
How many hours we got running?
Well, you're going to have to explain it quickly, and I know you can.
It's a long story how we got here. Certainly Citizens United, which created corporations acting as individuals. It's an amazing
unlimited
decision.
money.
Unlimited money.
Flooding the system.
I mean, Adelson plans to spend $100 million for Donald Trump because of their Israeli support for the right wing in Israel.
We need finance limits and public finance.
We should reimpose finance limits. We need to reinforce finance limits. I mean, there's a long series of things that got us here. But let's go back. 2020, Joe Biden saved the country and the party, and everybody coalesced around that idea. Here we are 4 years later. Joe does not seem able to coalesce the anti-Trump vote. Trump has not gained. Trump has not expanded his base. He can't even capitalize on this debate. That's how incompetent a political person he actually is. I mean, he's running simply to stay out of jail. And he has not been able to expand his base. There's a good hunk of the electorate out there that's waiting to vote Democratic, but we have to give them reason to do so. If you look at all the polls, our Senate candidates are running 7 points on an average above Joe Biden in all the battleground states. That tells us something right there. It's not that the people are rejecting the agenda of the Democratic Party or the centrist version of the Democratic Party.
We're not nominating the people, the younger people. And as you know, we have this strange situation in America where people dislike Congress, but they like their representative because Chuck Grassley and all these members of Congress, 80, 90% get reelected, and they are old. I mean, they are in their 70s. They are in their 80s. I think a young member of Congress is in their 60s.
The problem is, Brian, no matter how old these Congress people are, they're all rich. The Congress itself is corrupted by money as well. This is all the results of Citizens United. I've often said that our Congress people should wear uniforms like NASCAR drivers and with a patch of every corporation that gave them a big hunk of money, because that's what you've been left with in this country. I mean, we've talked about this before. We're very close to an oligarchy. You know, we went through this in Ukraine and then the post-Soviet Union. And I want to go back to your point, Brian, because it's very important. I've been telling people for the last year and a half, and everybody who asks me, and a lot of people ask you, I'm sure, what is going to happen with the war in Ukraine? The war in Ukraine is going to be decided on November 4th in the United States of America in the election. If the Democrats, and I was for Joe Biden up until last Thursday. I mean, I wanted him to be the standard bearer. If we do not win the election, Donald Trump says he can solve this in 30 minutes with his colleague and ideological buddy over there north of Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. There's only one way he's going to do that, and that is to sell out Ukraine. And that's exactly what they intend to do. Because, Trump, with his delusion of being a dictator, gravitates to other dictators. He likes them. And there's only, if you're going to solve this in 30 minutes and be just dividing Ukraine and splitting up the picture, that's it. End of the story. Everybody who sacrificed their lives and what you're going through with no electricity and how people are suffering and children. And I mean, I've got, we have a lot of connections. We've been there for a long time. It's a tragedy. But the war will be decided. The war will be decided in Washington, D.C.
Now, Trump supporters say, well, not so fast. If you look at the record, the original war started when Obama was in office, and Obama had a weak response, which I agree with, even though I supported Obama. And you look at Biden, and I would say he's done good, but he's also not done great in terms of supplying Ukraine. And it seems like Jake Sullivan has all these red lines and these half measures, and they're trying to stage manage the outcome. So there is still room for a real robust, hawkish Republican response. in the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan, of John McCain. And the Trump supporters argue, well, when Trump was in office, he was the one who provided lethal weapons. He was the one who chastised NATO into spending more money. He was the one who opposed Nord Stream 2, et cetera, et cetera. And during the debate, he said he doesn't accept Putin's conditions for ending the war. So would it be so bad? What's going to happen to Ukraine if Donald Trump is in?
Actions speak louder than words. We know that Donald Trump has had very warm relations with Vladimir Putin. There's only one way you can settle this quickly, and that's the only way. The story of how the war has been conducted, that's another long discussion, which we don't have time for today, I don't think. But wars are not linear events. Wars are fought in stages, and they develop. What was thought possible on February 22nd, 2022, looks a lot different today now, 2 years later. Nobody knew to the extent to which Ukraine would fight. Nobody knew the extent to which the government would be stable. There's many, many issues that have to be looked at. The bottom line is, if it wasn't for Joe Biden, this war may very well have already turned completely against Ukraine.
Ukrainians see it that way. I came across a great poll yesterday that Ukrainians by a 7-1 margin prefer Joe Biden over Donald Trump. So they can see, is it that they can see the freight train running at them if it's Donald Trump?
I think so. You said something very important too. The Republican Party, quote unquote, is no longer a political party in my view. It's a cult of personality at best. This is not the party of Ronald Reagan, and again, he wasn't my favorite either, but this is not the party of Ronald Reagan. This is not the party of John McCain, who Donald Trump disparaged repeatedly. This is a Republican Party that is remade in an isolationist, this America first, make America great again, whatever the heck that means, because nobody can ever define that to me, because America is still the greatest country on earth. And we still have a republic of some kind, if we can say it.
Would there be a chance that we could elect a Democrat who will be tougher than Biden on Russia? Because I noticed with disparagement that Joe Biden has been a little soft on some sanctions like oil and gas because he doesn't want consumers to pay higher prices. There is room for a tougher American stance on Russia. Would you agree?
There's room for a tougher stance on the war. Again, the geopolitics is a very of this. Again, we should put another day aside just to discuss the geopolitics of the whole situation. Again, you're going into an election, and no incumbent's going to do something that's going to raise gas prices, because that's the one metric in America that'll guarantee your defeat. There's a lot of things that go into this. I think the escalatory approach that was taken has actually worked. It's been the best that you could do under the circumstances. Now, again, I don't want to just spend all my time on that, but there's a lot of questions about the war that we could discuss, and there's some of them probably best left unsaid for now. But I think the Democrats are the only hope Ukraine has. I think it's as simple as that.
Let's pause for emphasis and repeat. The Democrats are the only hope that Ukraine has. You believe that?
The war in Ukraine will be decided on November 4th in the election in America, because if the Democrats win, the Russians will have to recalibrate. Ukraine is suffering, but don't think Russia's not having problems. They're losing troops at an alarming rate. They're lost equipment at an alarming rate. When you start taking 155 artillery from North Korea, where the reliability of that ammunition is very low, it means you're really having problems. And at some point, just paying people to send bodies home is not going to end the story in Russia. eventually the pain is going to become clear. I don't believe that that Vladimir Putin thinks he can go another 4 years with the sanction regime that's in place, the pressure that's being applied on him internationally, if he thinks there's no way out. And with Donald Trump, he's sure he's got a way out. I'm not sure. Listen, in my heart, I believe Donald Trump is completely compromised on Russia. I think they've got something on him, or he's got some business interests, because Donald Trump only does things when it's in his personal self-interest. He never does anything to help anybody else. He lets all his friends wither on the vine. Look at Rudy Giuliani. The guy ruined his career by touching this piece of manure.
Yeah,
where's word?
I'm agreeing with you politically, but maybe we should close with the Supreme Court ruling, because some people are reading it as saying that basically, as long as Trump justifies whatever criminality, bribes, pardons, corruption, giving away classified information, as long as he classifies that as an official act, he will not be punished for it. Is that the way you're reading it? And how worried are you about the fact that it looks like we have a Supreme Court that is not deciding things for the interest of the country, but actually are part of the cult of Donald Trump?
I mean, the Supreme Court that we're looking at right now, with Clarence Thomas as one of the suspects, and Mr. Henpeck himself, Sam Alito, who never noticed that upside-down flag outside his house. These guys are partisans. They're completely partisan justices. Any decent judge would have recused himself from dealing with the issue of presidential immunity. What they have done is exactly what you said. As long as it's an official act, basically, they've given the president of the United States a free ride. They've taken what is a Republican tradition in America, set by George Washington, of all people, reinforced by presidents all the way up to our orange former leader, and it's okay, whatever they want to do, as long as it's an official act. I mean, theoretically,
the guardrails are
include. It includes, I think on his social media platform, he recently suggested that Liz Cheney is no liberal, that she should be held by military tribunal for court martial.
He wants to
treason.
Prosecute his enemies.
Yeah, he wants to prosecute his enemies. I mean, he's just forthright about it. He forgets the fact that a jury of 12 people of his peers from New York City, they're his peers, where he's from, all found him guilty on 34 felony counts of covering up, sleeping with a prostitute, which of course he still says he didn't do, but I mean, why would you pay $130,000 for something you didn't do? And, that's how the American justice system works. He's undermining every aspect of American life. The country is bad. It's a third world country run by immigrants. You know anybody that's been overrun by an immigrant lately?
Well,
I do.
Rita, I know the alarming thing is that, and there's a lot of soul searching, how America ended up in the situation where it looks like they're poised to possibly elect an insurrectionist who tried to overturn the election in 2020, threatened his vice president, committed crimes, committed corruption. It looks like gave away classified information. Looks like there's a whole lot of conflicts of interest. I mean, it's on, and I think that's again, as you said, a deeper and longer discussion about America. But let's bring this home to Ukraine.
Hey, let me say one thing, Brian. Let me say one thing. And there's one thing we can do to stop it, and that is win this election in November. Political parties, the purpose of a political party is to win elections. The Democratic Party, which is the oldest political party in the world, functioning political party, needs to be a serious enough political organization to come to grips with the fact that the standard bearer that got us through the last 4 years, remarkably so, great president, needs to step aside for the good of the country to save us from what you just described. And there's only one way. There's only one way to stop it, and that is to win this election. It's a risk whichever way you turn. But I've been involved in this business long enough to know that I smell defeat. And if Joe Biden wakes up in 5th of November and turns around and is responsible for a blowout election where we lose the Senate, the House, and the presidency, he will regret that for the rest of his life, and his legacy will be tarnished. Joe Biden needs to do what's best for himself, which is to step aside, allow the Democratic Party to select a standard bearer who can go toe-to-toe with this criminal, because that's what he is, and let's win this election. That's the only way to bring this to a halt.
Okay, that's well put, Reno, and that's why I had you on the program. Thank you for being so sharp, succinct, and always on topic. That's it. There's a lot at stake, folks, in this election, not just for the United States, but if Reno is correct, and I believe he is, a lot is at stake for Ukraine and its ability to win this war against Russia. I would not, and Ukrainians by 7-1 see that too. They don't want to see Trump in the White House, even though they will have to, like everybody else, work with Donald Trump in America, in Ukraine, all over the world, if he is, God forbid, back in the White House. Rito, it's good talking to you. And by the time all of you see this, some of these issues could be decided, but I think Reno gave a really good picture of what's happening in the American political system, what needs to happen, and how America can improve.
Well,
so,
we're
Reno,
still the
thank you
last
for
great
coming on.
hope in the world. So,
What's that?
we're still the last great hope in the world, America.
Well, let's hope it gets better soon, too. So I think we'll end it there. And folks, thank you for joining us. And I thank Reno Domenico again, the chairman of Democrats Abroad in Ukraine, longtime Democratic Party official, talking about the election in America. Joe Biden drop out. As of today, when we record this, he hasn't. But there are other candidates who can win and defeat Donald Trump. And it's not just a lot at stake for America, but also for the war in Ukraine. So thank you for joining us, and tune in again next week, and we'll follow up on this conversation as we know more. Thank you.